All right. Ready to go? All right, welcome y'all. So welcome to the February Human Rights Commission meeting. We have a pretty fluid agenda for tonight, so hope folks were able to take some time to review some of the pieces that we'll be having discussion on this evening. But we can start off with our land acknowledgement. Since time immemorial, the Kalapuya people have been the indigenous stewards of our region, building dynamic communities, maintaining balance with wildlife, and enacting sustainable land practices. The land acknowledgement is a way of resisting the erasure of indigenous histories and to honor Native communities by inviting truth and reconciliation. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. As we consider the impacts of colonization, we also acknowledge the strength and resiliency of displaced indigenous people. The city of Eugene is built within the traditional homelands known as the Kalapuya Lihi. Kalapuya descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians of Oregon. They continue to make contributions in our community here and across the lands. We express our respect for the inherent political sovereignty of all federally recognized tribal nations and indigenous people who live in the state of Oregon and across the nation. Okay. Thank you. So this evening, we have a pretty full agenda. As you can look, is there anything missing from this agenda or items that need amendment? Okay. So our first order will be reviewing the agenda and minutes from our previous meeting. The folks had an opportunity to review those minutes. Okay. Can we get a motion for approval on those minutes? To approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain?
We have some online. Let me check. Commissioners online, can you raise your hand if you approve the minutes? 2. Can you raise your hands if you oppose it? And can you raise your hand if you abstain? One abstention. Okay, Booker.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Okay.
good.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you. So moved. Okay, our next order of business is the HRC leadership and commission updates. So just as a reminder, this is space to share any announcements about community engagement, different things that you may have done related to your assignment as a human rights commissioner over the past month, or sharing attitudes or perspectives on human rights from your lens. So does anyone have anything to share? Anyone online? Okay. Well, I think one of our points that I think we would like to highlight is welcome back, Commissioner Booker. It's good to see you. And happy to hear that you are you're back and well. So I hope that you've been well since we last spoke. So by you being present, we've ended your leave of absence. So welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm having some video issues, but good to be back, and thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome back. So we have had some folks engage in some activities over the past month, and I'm wondering if this may be an appropriate time for us to share on some of the engagement with the listening sessions and some of your engagement with the community members and public. Feel comfortable doing so?
Do you want to do that now?
I think just, yeah, your
Okay.
perspective and engagement, we'll revisit it and we see you updates.
Okay, I'll say what my impressions are from the 4 listening sessions that I attended and then ask people to jump in about it. I was left with 2 very strong impressions. One is that people are realistically terrified. And the second impression is that people are asking us and the city for concrete actions. And they want them fairly quickly. And I got a very strong sense, especially from the listening session with the queer community, that the level of fear is extreme. And for instance, one of the things that they were talking about that night was a need for a dedicated liaison with the police commission. And they had a lot of questions about how anyone can trust any government agency or nonprofit who takes federal funds. And as we all know, there's already been significant erasure of a lot of groups, but the transgender group is definitely disappearing from all federal websites. The We See You meeting this month was rescheduled, so I haven't, it's next week, so I haven't really spoken to Kiana about this, and I'd like for us to kind of open it up to talk about how these listening sessions can be handled in We See You, but I have already asked Melissa for access to the notes and the videos so that we can try to pick out themes. And there are 3 more listening sessions coming up. So analysis can't be fully done until maybe another month from now. But We See You and HRC probably really need to pay attention to the major themes. One action that occurred to me, and again, this is just my thought, we could possibly, as a commission and or a city, put rights on the websites, link to have a link that says, what are your rights? And then you click the link and it tells you your human rights. And that would be publicly available to anybody. And we could also try to distribute a list of rights to our community partners. I don't know if that would have to go through the city attorney or how we would handle that, but it just occurred to me that people are asking for some guidance on that and whether we are tuned into it. And we can talk about the entire group of rights, but I think that what people are asking for right now is assurance that they do have the right to equality and dignity. They do have the right to health care, public service, the right to control your own body, the right to life and liberty, security of person, freedom from detention, right to asylum, freedom of movement, right to practice culture, right to education. These are the things that keep coming up. So that I had just taken some informal notes about what I was hearing, and John was at a session as well, and I'm not sure who else was, so I invite you to add to that.
I think in addition to what you said, my memory and recollection of what was asked for was visibility, and probably operationalize it as that, as visibility, and also kind of aspirational hope for civic engagement in general from not necessarily city staff or city programming, but from each other. With just in general, this hope that there's could be through that visibility and a greater level of the civic engagement.
Safe,
Right.
Yeah, safely. that, I really appreciate that highlighting of the need to be involved. I'm also aware that many people are frightened to be involved.
Thanks for that update.
You mentioned there's more meetings coming up. Will we get the dates and invites for
Yes,
this? Okay.
so I'm still firming up the 3 listening sessions. There will be one next Tuesday, yes, for the Middle Eastern Arab community. And then mid-March, we'll do one for Native Americans. And then we are still trying to coordinate for immigrant advocates and immigrants, but I will let HRC know. And we see you, I'll send the actual invite to the members.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And just a little bit of additional information, the listening sessions, because they are part of a process that our office is working on right now with staff across the organization to create new community engagement guidelines. So those listening sessions were initially scheduled to hear from specific groups how they like to engage with the city. But because of all the executive actions targeting some of those communities, we have made space for people to also talk about what is important to them right now. So we're trying to accomplish both goals with these listening sessions.
Commissioner Caldwell has her hand up.
Commissioner Kabuko?
I just wanted to make sure, Melissa, you and I had talked about sharing some of this information at the Leadership Eugene Springfield Arts and Culture Day on May 14th. So I just wanted to make sure if there's any really important information or upcoming dates that we can share, it'd be really great to have those ready to distribute.
Will do. I'll share those ASAP.
Thanks, Commissioner Kabuko. Okay, does anyone else have any announcements or updates for the commissioner updates?
Do you want me to give an update or summary about the last police commission meeting, or is that later on?
Yeah, this would be appropriate.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, and Commissioner Dr. Booker, I don't recall, I don't think that you were at the last meeting. I just attended in an effort to cover for you. So there were several policies or 2 policies that were reviewed this past meeting. Both, I think, have some relevance to us. One was a welfare check policy for Eugene Police Department, and review of the use of drones in civil events and protests policy. Of course, concern about privacy and safety related to use of drones. Also, there's some concern, or of course, the likelihood that drones could be beneficial to law enforcement to identify when when there may be something significantly unsafe occurring. And Eugene Police Department did, of course, report that that's what they're concerned with. I mean, that's and also that the drone policy that they have in place now does not allow for facial recognition, and that's something I think we've talked about here maybe some months ago.
Mhm.
I have a recollection of it at least. And then, of course, the welfare check policy that was reviewed, that involves often our most vulnerable in the community. And it's, the purpose was reviewed. There were very few modifications. It was the modifications that were made since the last review were to include gender neutral terminology, and which of course aligns with our objectives here in Human Rights Commission. The most common occurrence in welfare check is, someone knows someone that they haven't seen in a long time. And so the unfortunate situation is often that they go and they discover that someone has died in their home or in a location. And so often also we have our most vulnerable folks with serious and persistent mental illnesses who get some welfare checks. And of course, there's some concern about human rights and rights to self-determination related to welfare checks when someone is still alive, but perhaps at risk for needing higher level of care, interventions, and that sort of thing. There was announcement also that the crime ring related to that was targeted toward our Asian populations here in town, that there was resolution. There wasn't detail explained, but it may be that we've got some more details coming from our liaison. Those are the high points, I think. And I have more notes here, but those are the things that I highlighted to make sure to bring back the question.
Thank you. Again, thanks for the comprehensive report. So looking at that, if anyone has any follow-up questions or items, and Commissioner Booker, as you return, I think coordinating with Commissioner Bradley to get an update on that coverage and would be really valuable. And then the two of you can talk about coordinating, and yeah, I appreciate that. I know those are some topics that we've discussed in previous commission meetings too. So were there any action items or areas for support that they requested from the commission?
The things that I know we had significant overlap with were related to the crime ring. And so I know that we did not have resolution. It was an ongoing investigation the last time we met. That's the only one that I thought we should close the loop on.
Okay. Thank you.
Perhaps that we'll have an opportunity for that tonight. It may be that they're still in process of investigation and there's some limited information that can be shared, and maybe that's why there was just report that there had been a level of resolution.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I think looking at our commissioner updates, is there anything else that folks would like to include in our update section? Thanks for that liaison report.
And also, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, Chair, there was discussion about the homeless sweeps and potential weather exemptions for the homeless encampment sweeps, since we've had both occurring. And I don't know that we have, I don't know that there's resolution, but it was addressed in the meeting. That's something that is significant concern to the Human Rights Commission that also was addressed, and we had strong advocates for, a humane policy, preserving human rights from several police commissioners.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that update. And I think that we'll maybe revisit that as we get into the homelessness and poverty work group updates and see where potential pathways for liaisoning might be with some of the dialogue that we had in our most recent meeting. Commissioner Lowe, I saw your hand come up. Was that a question or announcement?
I was just going to ask if you wanted me to provide my portion of homelessness and poverty work group updates now, but we can do it later on the agenda item.
Yep, we'll hold to then. Thank you. Okay. Well, thanks for all of that. And yeah, that's exactly what our HRC leadership and commissioner updates are for. So yeah, appreciate the dialogue and all the engagement that you've had. So our next item on our agenda is our EPD liaison report from Lieutenant Williams. So Lieutenant Williams, Welcome.
He's not on the call, Chair.
Oh, okay.
He didn't have a message, or if he is having some problem with connection.
Okay.
We do have the most updated report. I'm gonna share it in a second.
There's Alani Williams. Is that someone?
There's someone with the hands up, can you check?
Yeah.
Perhaps he's using different connection.
Lieutenant Williams, is that you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, all right, perfect.
All right, I'm using my wife's computer because I just returned from town. So yes, I'm Lonnie Williams tonight.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Well, the floor is yours.
I just upgraded him to panelist, so that takes some time.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, am I in?
Mhm.
All right. Thank you for upgrading me and catching on to the change tonight. I didn't anticipate that I would have been logged in under a different name, so I apologize for the confusion. I only have two, maybe three items to discuss with you, and then I'm willing to chat about some other things if there are some concerns. I know some things were brought up related to the police commission that I wasn't prepared to talk about tonight, but I do know about some of that stuff, and I'm happy to try to clarify as far as I can. The two items, one we already discussed at the last update, and the first one was related to some school-age people driving up to students at a charter school on South Willamette Street and then shooting them with like airsoft pellet guns and using homophobic type derogatory language. It happened over several days and it didn't seem to be targeted at any particular student or gender. We were able to coordinate getting a mobile trailer down there, a Guardian trailer, and we haven't had any additional incidents that have been reported to the police. So not sure what to make of that, but it does seem to have passed, at least for now. The second concern was a tagging that took place at a business on West 11th that identified itself as a queer and persons of color safe space within the community. The messages written in an ink pen were homophobic and seemed to have been directed toward a particular person that's associated there. They're not an employee, but possibly a vendor or a contractor. That one has been assigned to Detective Peterson in the Special Investigations Unit. That report came in electronically, and we're sort of working out some deficiencies with that system. The idea is that it's a low barrier way for people to be able to make reports to the police without lengthy delays. But the problem is there's no two-way dialogue. And so the information that comes into the police is frequently very limited. And there's no opportunity for the police to ask clarifying questions or gather additional information at the time of the report submission. So we're working on some alternatives, which might include making bias crimes something that isn't reported electronically, that must have a police dispatch, so that we can get the best investigation as soon as possible on these cases. And then those cases would, of course, continue to be forwarded to our Special Investigations Unit for possible assignment to a detective. So more on that in the future, but I did want to share that with the commission. The last thing I wish to speak about or speak to is some graffiti that's been taking place in the Churchill neighborhood. Some of it has been hate speech, but it hasn't been super focused on any particular group. And a good deal of it has also been gang related. Sergeant Dorman with the Special Investigations Unit tells me he thinks it's youth tagging, which doesn't make it any less troublesome or alarming to the residents in the area. But it doesn't appear to be targeting any particular person or residents down there, and possibly more youth and tagging and gang oriented. So those are the three items I wanted to bring to the commission tonight. I'm willing to speak about those or any other concerns that you might have.
Okay. Thank you for your report. Anyone have any questions or follow-up?
Lieutenant Williams, do you have any information on resolution to the crime ring investigation that was targeting our Asian populations?
Yeah, I'll try to be careful not to speak out of turn, but one of my duties at the Eugene Police is I supervise our property crimes unit, and they've been working those cases since they took place. And I haven't been able to speak much about it because it's been an open and ongoing investigation, and actually continues to be, but there has been some information that's been made available to the public, and so I'll try to share with you what's going on and what we're doing about it. But we've got a gang that has been moving about the West Coast. They've been tied to cases in California, Oregon, Washington, and now we know Idaho, and possibly Nevada. Our community was hit multiple times. This gang has an MO where they can identify vulnerable members of our population. They tend to be this demographic, these Asian citizens in our community of Asian descent. And they're able to do some surveillance. They're able to do some things that make these people extra vulnerable. And then they're taking valuables out of these people's homes. Within a couple of weeks ago, we were able to use trackers and different sorts of things and collaborate with the Tiger Police and the Portland Police, as well as the Bend Police Department, and tracked some of these folks down to a house in Bend. We had a simultaneous operation involving all those agencies in multiple locations in Oregon, and we're able to arrest a number of people and recover some stolen property that actually some of it linked back to Boise, Idaho. So this investigation is still ongoing. Unfortunately, we did arrest a number of these people back in June, but there was just insufficient evidence for the prosecution to feel comfortable moving forward with charges at that time. And we're still calling through the evidence that was recovered in that case. But as soon as we could possibly communicate with the victims in those cases in our community without upsetting the investigation, those communications took place by the lead detective, Detective Jake Lawler, and then our Asian community liaison with the Special Investigations Unit, which is Detective Kurt Newell. So I know there's a feeling in that community that's acknowledged also within the department that communication with those victims could have been swifter over the previous months, but that opportunity took place quickly in this case. And I think it's important to understand that the lack of specific communication or ongoing communication wasn't out of apathy or a lack of sympathy. It was discussed throughout our unit, and while we were trying to understand how this gang operated, there was concern that putting too much information out publicly related to the MO of this gang could actually make members of this community extra vulnerable. So whether that was the right decision or not, that was the decision that was made at the time, and hopefully it's understood that it was made in good faith, and with the hope of keeping the rest of our community as safe as possible. All that's to say, I don't have great information that we now suddenly have the evidence to charge these people with the crimes they committed in our community. I do feel as though we're on the right path to put these people in prison on charges related, if not to our community, then to other citizens in cases in Oregon and possibly Idaho.
Lieutenant Williams, I think I have two questions, and one is surrounding the follow-up and reach out to the demographic that was targeted. Has EPD had an opportunity to liaison with folks that were in those targeted populations and provide supports or guidance that might help them mitigate safety concerns that still exist? And what does that look like?
Yes, those communications have taken place and are ongoing, both with the victims in those cases, as well as a representative, Mr. David Tram. So yes. I probably hesitate to talk too much about the specifics of the cases again, insofar as desire to not publicize the particular vulnerabilities, but those conversations have taken place.
And do you think there's any space for the Human Rights Commission to provide support or engagement with folks that have been impacted or groups that have been impacted? This seems to be kind of within the realm of what we do.
That very well could be. I'm not entirely sure. This is an unusual kind of a situation. The folks committing these crimes aren't motivated by a bias, arguably. They're motivated by an opportunistic criminal awareness of a vulnerability that just happens to coincide with a particular social group or behavior by certain members of our community. And I don't think it's particularly related to the suspect's perception of these people's cultural identity. I think it has to do with behaviors. But whether that leaves room for your commission to reach out to them, I know that there are feelings of vulnerability, and there were moments of feeling upset that hopefully we've allayed to some degree. And like I said, I'm hopeful that we're seeing a resolution in the works. This was a pretty stunning operation. We were able to capture a lot of people. We've got one person that's still outstanding, but we're going to get him. But I think those feelings of vulnerability and violation are going to exist for a time among the community. And so I can speak offline with you guys or through Fabio about specifics if there are more detailed questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that dovetailed into what was my second question on it was, from my understanding from what has been shared more publicly, is that it was particularly targeting folks with an intersection of identities within folks who were Asian and living in our community. And so my question was going to be, in those types of investigations, if that is a truth, and if that's not a truth, then this might not be related. But in that case, I was curious how this type of report didn't come through to the commission and that bias, having that bias component. So was there a pattern targeting a specific demographic, or was it socioeconomic, or was it identifying someone's ethnicity or race as being a component of this?
So there's bleed over. And so it's a little unclear. What I would say is that the motive behind these crimes was financial, and it was identifying patterns of behavior by certain members of our community. It was not based on their ethnicity or their skin color per se. It was based on patterns of behavior, positions they held within the community, more so than, well, that was the motive. The motive was a vulnerability that was identified where these people were acting in a way that left opportunities observed by our suspects, who were organized and careful, but it wasn't out of a perception of their race or driven by a bias against these people. So that's probably why that didn't make it to the commission initially.
Yeah, thanks for that response. Understanding the nuances of that investigatory and reporting process helps us know. And I think there's multiple folks on the commission that I know have expressed interest in wanting to learn more about it and know what type of follow-up we can do to liaison with the community. So I would say let's continue that conversation, the Office of Equity and Community Engagement, and see what next steps would look like. Vice Chair Hira, I saw your hand come up, and I was wondering if you had a question. Okay. Well, if you do, just or if you're having any communication related challenges, just drop that in the chat. Does anyone have any other questions for Lieutenant Williams? Okay. Well, thank you for your presence here, answering those questions.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Commissioner, I feel moved to let you know, I know this is an uncertain time for a lot of members of our community, but that the Eugene Police Department's committed to protecting citizens of all backgrounds within our community.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate how thorough this report's always are. Okay, our next item is hate and bias report led by Fabio. So Fabio, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I will present a very brief report. In December, I did share with you a partial report of the things that had been documented by the state bias hotline staff. Now I'm going to present you just a summary of some of the information that has been documented by City of Eugene staff, mostly in the form of hate speech and mostly coming from the downtown library. So let me share the screen so people at home can follow us as well. Sorry, let's try once more. Yes, I believe everyone can see now this summary of cases. So we have a system that City of Virginia staff use to report risk incidents. And that system has included now a way for staff to report hate speech, for example, or acts of discrimination involving patrons at our facilities or staff. And in 2024, we got a total of 83 cases. Almost every single one of them are hate speech. And I will provide more detail on the cases when I present you the final report for 2024. So there will be a combined report that includes the data reported as hate crimes by Eugene Police, the report that comes out of the bias hotline. Those are the cases of discrimination and bias incidents, plus some information on hate speech that is documented by our own staff. So what you can see here is that the cases have been grouped by the target population. A trend that has been growing in previous years is that LGBTQ plus people are being the largest group among those being targeted in hate speech, similar with the bias incidents reported by the report to the state hotline. Anti-Black 25 cases, also very alarming because they represent less than 2% of the population. Attacks on people with disability, 11, Latino, Latinx 2, anti-Semitic 2, and age discrimination 1. So those were the cases reported to us. This is just a very brief summary. I hope that by next month I can present a full report on the situation that was documented in 2024. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anyone have any questions?
I'm wondering if, when you say hate speech, is it always verbal? Or are there things that happen in writing or graffiti or things?
All of those.
All of these.
Yeah. And the difference that in this case, they may not be targeting someone who identifies with the group being targeted in the speech. For example, some of the cases are library staff try to remove someone for a specific behavior that is not in alignment with library code of conduct. And then the press starts shouting hate speech.
Right.
And they're shouting every direction. So staff documents that.
Right.
But sometimes the staff receiving that speech or the patrons around do not identify with the groups being targeted.
But it still counts as hate.
Yes, we are still documenting and trying to understand, and people face some penalties for doing that at the public space.
Thank you.
And in some cases, they are banned from the library or suspended. There are different ways that they act according to their code of conduct and the rules of the library.
Cool. Anyone else have any questions? Thanks for the follow-up and preparing these materials. Okay. Our next item is a request for support, the U of O Human Rights Center proposal. This is a discussion and vote. There were materials included in your packets. And we've had a couple opportunities. The students involved in this reached out and attended our International Human Rights Day event. And were directed to prepare materials and send them over. So do we have anyone present?
We do. We have
Wonderful.
a Charlie Petrick. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Charlie, are you there?
No, yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You're perfect with the pronunciation. You're correct in noting it. Hi, nice to meet you all. We attended the Human Rights Center or the Human Rights Commission event earlier a couple months ago. We're super privileged. I'm working alongside another student named Sophia Barghouti, um, and I'm a senior at the University of Oregon studying global study and geography. My pronouns are he, him. And we've been working tirelessly over the past 6 or 7 months to address gaps in what the University of Oregon offers surrounding human rights education, discussion facilitation, and applied learning on campus. We've really identified a situation where coming out of a situation last year with a lot of strife on campus due to ongoing conversations around Israel and Gaza and students from both sides feeling like they weren't heard. Realized that the University of Oregon, lacks significant opportunity for free inquiry, the basic tenet of a university to take place. Facilitated discussions, questions about what are human rights, how are they operationalized, how are they put into practice, not only just in our community. We're dealing with so many human rights issues here at home, but also globally for students of multidisciplinary interests. So we've been working over the past 6 months. We got the support of our student government, multiple different faculty from different organs. We're talking School of Design, SOJC, this journalism, communication, education, global studies, political science, really embracing this multidisciplinary aspect. And just last week, we gained the support of our provost, Dr. Chris Long, to put together a task force that will work over the course of the next year in order to establish Center for Human Rights at the University of Oregon, which is great news for expanding experiential learning opportunities for students to work not only abroad, nationally, but also locally, and then also expanding the ability for students to engage in free inquiry and discussion surrounding human rights and what those concepts are. So, which I guess we could have a conversation like that as well. It's very complicated. So I'm here just to kind of present our proposal that we put forth last week, seek support from the Human Rights Commission, and hopefully set the grounds for a continued collaboration. We think it's critically important that the center works alongside the community, works with the community, provides opportunities for students to engage with the community. We know that that is a huge priority of the current administration of University of Oregon right now, is to increase community engagement, specifically surrounding human rights issues. So we're hoping that this sets the ground for continued conversations, input from the Human Rights Commission regarding the structure, and hopeful opportunities for collaboration going forward. So I'm open to any questions that anyone may have, and otherwise I guess I yield the time. So thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you. So I think looking at our time frame and for folks to ask questions, probably our most immediate need would be understanding your proposal and what type of support you would like from our body in this process. And then for us to probably ask questions about what that engagement would look like with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of our conversations last week with the provost, we talked about, so the task force that will be established is going to be a part of, equal mix of students and faculty, but we've also made an emphasis to try to include community members. So one way that that support could be, emphasized is including specific feedback on what is coming out of the task force. And that requires a line of communication that is put together through the chairs of the task force, and whoever may be chairing, or who is chairing the Human Rights Commission at the time. And that would mean, materials coming from the task force to the Human Rights Commission, soliciting feedback, soliciting support, especially on the aspects of community outreach, right? So when they're going to get to a point in the task force stage where we're going to try to decide what the center's community engagement is, what's feasible, what can we fund, and where do students need it, right? And so those are the big things. And I think that soliciting feedback and maintaining an open line of communication is the first step towards a greater collaboration. This is a 3 to 5 year project at least. Centers take a little while to get their feet in the ground at the University of Oregon. And so we're hoping that within the next 5 years, ideally, what our vision is to have students have, internship opportunities, to be able to communicate directly with the Human Rights Commission regarding their interests, specifically in the work that y'all are doing with, hate crimes reporting and community monitoring, which is critically important for human rights monitoring at the local level, and to continue that partnership. But we do want to emphasize that this is pretty nebulous right now for good reason. We've left a lot of it open. We've done a lot of groundwork over the last 6 months, but we're leaving a lot of it open for the decision makings within the task force stage, if that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Vice Chair, I see our Vice Chair Hira has a question, so we'll open the floor for questions from the commission and see what dialogue that presents.
Thank you, Charlie. Very excellent proposal. My question is, given that the majority of residents and community members in Eugene are not formally affiliated with the University of Oregon, how might they still benefit by the creation of a human rights center on campus?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, questions we've asked ourselves as well. I think student energy and support is so, so critical. There's a lot of students who can do a lot of work, groundwork in the community. There's also a lot of support for students from the university doing that work to go out into the community and do so. We have this constituency of budding professionals who are really interested across disciplines in human rights, and hopefully, they can contribute to the crafting of policy, the crafting of, change making policy at the local level, the ability to analyze, reporting, analyze policy coming out of it. These are just ideas, but we really think that the student body isn't mobilized in the direction of the community. And that's an issue because a lot of students are interested, but they don't know how to get involved, or might not have the connections to, or might not even know that there is a pathway for them within the Eugene community to do work in human rights. People look abroad, people look nationally at the federal government level, and right now that's threatened. And so there really is a need for community engagement. And we think that this is a good way for students to get involved and really bring the skills that they have over the 4 years that they're here, and contribute to the community and give back to the community that's given so much to them.
Great. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I wondered, Charlie, if you were looking for a statement of support from us.
That would be ideal. Yeah, I think that any support that we can have is fantastic. And then we will be passing, if there is support, again, we will be following up to make sure that we can open lines of communication between whoever the chairs may be. I'm graduating this year. I will be leaving this work behind. Sophia Barghouti, as I mentioned, the other student that is working with me and who attended the Human Rights Celebration meeting in December, will likely be following up in order to establish those lines of communication, to make sure that y'all are involved if deemed appropriate, in the establishment of the center over the next year.
I noticed that you were seeking funding, and often funding sources want letters of support.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
if that's something we can do, I would really encourage us to do that.
That would be really helpful as we seek grants and even private funding. Showing community buy-in in something like this is really important.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kabuko and then Commissioner Booker.
I believe Commissioner Booker raised his hand before me if he wants to go.
Oh, okay, perfect. Commissioner Booker, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Definitely like your proposal. One thing that I read through some of it. One thing that I really noticed is there's not a lot of Black organizations affiliated with this, which concerns me. I'm all for it. I'm all for the letter. Just advice wise, or I guess my 2 cents is I would like to see the university, if with this being formed, building relationships with Black fraternities, the Lily Reynolds, um, can't remember the name right now, got a brain fart. The Lily Reynolds, African American Cultural Center, I think, on the university. The African American, I think, is Black student athletes. The Black student alumni. Um, I know for sure that these organizations would love to be a part of the forming of this. I don't know how many Black professors you have on here. It doesn't identify, but I don't see a lot of Black student organizations, and I think that's really super important that you build relationships with these Black organizations and get them a part or get them on board with the initial creation of this. That university makes millions off of Black student athletes. I
Yep.
mean, the university wouldn't even be there if it wasn't for the Black student athletes that come through that university. So I would like to definitely see more Black student athletes a part of this. And I'm a futuristic type of person, visionary. I see this as being something that would be very good to sustain a relationship that hasn't existed between the University of Oregon and the community here. Um, a lot of times when I speak to Black athletes, they don't even realize that there's a Black community here.
Yeah.
So this would be a good introduction to letting the Black student population know that there is an organization that they can come to and communicate with. I even see this possibly, I don't know if it's legal or not, or something we have to vote on, but maybe you guys having a liaison on our board and we having maybe one or two liaisons on your board.
Yeah.
That would bridge the relationship, I think, drastically, especially in you guys understanding what's going on in the community surrounding you. We get a lot of complaints, we get a lot of reports that you guys aren't privy to. I'm pretty sure vice versa on the
Yeah.
campus. But it would be good to stand in solidarity with another human rights commission on the university. And I would also suggest that you get some power players, maybe some of the alumni on board, some of the people that are the big heavyweight money dealers.
Yep.
Even the Nike guy, I can't remember his name right now, but even trying to reach out to him. To see if he would support it. The more big names you get to support this in terms of the funding and money, because what you want to do is you want to have an impact, and you can't impact unless you have the money players on board with whatever it is you want to do. Everything's controlled by money, so you need a lot of the money players on your university board to support this. It's a great idea. Hopefully, you guys get going. I would love to see this come to fruition. But definitely, I'm all for it, and just would like to see a lot more of your Black student population
Yeah.
on board with this.
I really, really appreciate that. You make a poignant point about the money, and that's an unfortunate reality, but it is true. A lot of times, I know when we talk about night, there's some conflicting considerations with human rights on campus and what the students believe, and then the funding that we will receive. But the point you make about Black athletes and Black students, in general is really, really important. We have shied away from directly including identity-based organizations and cultural orgs specifically. We've had conversations across campus to really gain feedback from a bunch of different organizations, as many as we could contact. But in the formation, this next step is really important to now gaining more feedback once we have a formulated idea. And so that will absolutely be a priority going forward. And we've involved faculty and students who hold those identities as well. And so really, really great points, and I appreciate it. And this is just to make the point, this is the great feedback that we can get from being in communication outside of the university, because it often gets overly academicized, the conversations around this, what are the research hubs, what are not, instead of looking at kind of the ground level, what we really need in the community and how this can have an impact both ways. So really, really appreciate that.
Oh yeah, and definitely introduce it to the coaches, because if the coaches
Yeah.
can't introduce it to the players are the money. So
Yeah.
if you're going to protest, if you're going to take a stand against something, especially the climate that we're in, student athletes run that campus. I mean, that's just the truth. Without the student athletes, that campus is weak. So go to the coaches, go to the athletic director, get them on board. Because if you get the athletic student population on board with this, especially the Black student athletes, then you're gonna definitely have some momentum with trying to establish this as something that could really be helpful to all demographics on the campus.
Yeah, definitely. The last part I absolutely agree with. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of conversations to be had about who has a place and in what place it is, and specifically around human rights and sports, right? We're a big sports school, and it has its pros and cons. And so there needs to be conversations about that going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks. So we've got Commissioner Kabuko, and we did start 5 minutes late going into this item, so we have 5 minutes left on it. And Commissioner Kabuko, the floor is yours for questions, and then we've got 5 minutes until we got to wrap up here.
Thank you. I really appreciate this proposal, and I agree that it would be a really great idea for us to support it. I also really appreciate your outlook in trying to, sorry, just a second. I appreciate your outlook in trying to include the community, because I completely agree, and that's something that I have been trying to work on in many varying capacities, is the connection between the university and the community at large, and how we're going to keep some of these young professionals, like you said, that are coming out of this huge university in our area. We see a lot of them leaving, and I think you're right. They don't know what's in the area. They don't know what opportunities are here. And I would love something like this to be on the HRC and the city's radar. And if there's even like further development in some kind of community plan coming from this, would be great. And like how to integrate, I second Dr. Booker's suggestion of maybe seeing if there's somehow we can have a liaison on the HRC, or just having someone a little bit more involved at the city level. I would also recommend making sure you're involved in Springfield as well. But yes, I love this idea. I love the idea of integrating the community and the university. And I think that you would have a lot of willing players if you just know exactly where to reach out to. And I would be happy to connect outside of this as well.
You know, that would be great. I think that, sorry, I'm writing notes about what you said. I think that would be fantastic. And I think even if there's a letter of support that is written, I would encourage within that letter of support to add a recommendation that for the task force or for any establishment, there do be a community liaison to add a little bit more pressure. Because those conversations are definitely happening within the group that we have right now. We talked about it last week about having a community liaison on that task force just to make sure that there is that voice. And so if there is something that comes out of the commission, which would be really appreciated, I would encourage, not shying away from adding some pressure on the university to include that, because that will help our case as well for advocating for that. So
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So our next steps here are going to be looking at this request for support. So what I'm hearing from the commission is that we have interest in supporting this proposal. We've heard a recommendation of writing a statement in support of it for potential funding streams and development opportunities. And I think what we would be agreeing to in a proposal is that we would like to take next steps and continue this conversation, and probably explore what this relationship with you all would look like. So articulating that in a request for support, we need to put a motion on the table.
Sure. Can I offer some procedural information on this? The commission has written letters of support to different projects. It depends about what is included in the letter, because it cannot include commitments by the city of Eugene. So the commission, as a body, as a volunteer group, can offer support for something that you believe is going to benefit the community. If there is a specific request for the group for commissioners' involvement in that work, the commission can also discuss that and appoint someone to volunteer. Those would not be part of the formal liaison assignments that the city does. Those are just for city of Eugene bodies and commissions. And that's because of some code limitations and the promise we make to commissions when they apply that they must serve in one of those bodies of the city. But informally, we can establish some partnership. And if the center is established, they will go and they have specific events or projects and they want to seek advice from the commission, they can request that. And if you have capacity to help, you are welcome to volunteer your time to any of those activities.
Great.
And we also have institutional relations, so depending on what is being asked by the group, we can work with the staff who does that kind of institution to institution conversations to see what is possible for us to engage with.
Wonderful. So I think looking at our motion would be to explore making a statement of support and to continue this conversation, likely with a smaller ad hoc group, seeing probably a lot of parallels with the WeCU. So I think our decision is exploring a statement of support and working in what ways we can with them. So what do we want our motion to be? Is that a formal motion? It's
So
not very articulate. So, okay. So our motion would be to continue this relationship and explore a statement of support. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, so moved. So Charlie, next steps will be liaisoning with the Office of Equity and Community Engagement. And then our commission will determine who will be engaging with you all as you move forward in this project. Great work. And really excited that you're looking into those gaps between our institution, our university and municipality. It's very important. And hopefully our community members can help fill those in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, all of you, for, you know, the great questions and your willingness to engage in this type of way. And, you know, as I leave the university, I just only hope, as an Oregonian and also as a Eugenian now myself, I hope that this continues to grow and flourish. So in a way that's best for both groups. So really appreciate it and look forward to continuing this partnership.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you. Thank you.
So our next item is a request for support from Disorient. This is exciting. We've supported them in the past. So we have a representative that will be joining us.
We do. We have Pamela Kwan on, and she's rejoining as a panelist.
Okay, wonderful. So Pamela, as you join, we've got 10 minutes slotted for y'all. So it's 6:37. So we'll look to do a brief presentation of what support you're looking for. And then we'll have a quick discussion and vote and try to have an answer by 6:48.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'll try to speak quickly in the interest of time. Thank you for the chance to address the Human Rights Commission and let you know what Disorient's been doing in our community. For those who are just hearing about Disorient, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're predominantly volunteer run, and our mission is to promote understanding about Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander voices and stories through independent film. It's been a really powerful platform. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary. We've invested in this community for 20 years, focusing on social justice and AANHPI, that's Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander issues that translate to universal human experiences. March 7th to 23rd is going to be a great hybrid festival of 100+ films that educate, inspire compassion and creativity throughout our community. We have a live program and a virtual program, and the virtual program is open to audiences in Oregon, Washington, California, and Hawaii. We have experienced incidences of anti-Asian hate that escalated throughout the pandemic. The public is also bombarded with rhetoric by high-profile officials and celebrities that dehumanize and devalue the contributions of immigrants more broadly across our community. And we're aware of the property crimes that were mentioned earlier targeting Asian Americans, which is extremely distressing. A lot of the Asian American residents in our community are concerned and fearful and need support from our city. We feel that our work is very necessary to show our Asian American residents that they're safe, protected, and welcome in the city of Eugene. And we'd love to give exposure to these diverse stories and display very visibly through our city indications that communicate this inclusive spirit that we all know that we have here. Our request is $1,000 of sponsorship from the HRC towards signage that we have ordered. We've ordered 2 street banners you might have seen on 8th and 11th, and pole banners on West 7th. I can go through the cost of those if you would like all of that, but we're asking for $1,000 sponsorship just to empower all of this community who feels unseen and maybe not as supported and not as visible. Disorient's been a cultural asset of the city of Eugene, and we are really excited to be sharing all of these wonderful stories. So with that, I would like to see if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Pamela.
Sure.
So commissioners, does anyone have any questions about this? Any comments? Okay, so well, Pamela, I know we've done requests for support and supported y'all in the past, and I do really value what you all do in the community. And if we don't have any questions or comments, I'd be comfortable making a motion to approve this request for support. Knowing that the HRC typically looks for opportunities for engagement, and I think our goal moving forward would be saying what would be a meaningful way for the Human Rights Commission to engage in the event. And that's probably my question. And then after that, I am open to just moving forward with the motion.
Sure. Thank you. I think some meaningful ways would be maybe a letter of support that we could put on our website. One aspect of our sponsorship is that in our sponsor acknowledgements, one of the options is to be included in the list of sponsors that appears at the end of our festival trailer. And our festival trailer plays before each screening at the Art House. We have, I think, 19 screenings at the Art House. So that's all the audience members that sees that the city of Eugene does support the community and supports the work of the organization. In addition, that sponsor acknowledgement is included in the virtual program of 29 film blocks that shows to our audiences in Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, and California. And I think it's really powerful to put that out there, that the city of Eugene is super inclusive to, you know, communities outside here. So I would say a letter support and any type of promotional support for our festival would be wonderful.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I think looking with the Human Rights Commissioners, any requests over $250, and our goal would be to be engaging and coming to the event. So it sounds like there might be some opportunities to share a little bit about what we do. And I've attended this event in the past and would be interested. So yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Anything additional? Okay.
I would like to make one final comment, if I might. I heard what some of the comments and some of the issues that were discussed in the earlier portion of the meeting. And I just want to add that in our program this year, we have quite an extensive number of films that are that promote LGBTQ stories, and also Black stories and Black representation, Latinx. So I hope that we can be, you know, create some bridges outside of just our own community as well.
Yeah, thank you for that note. Okay, so looking at this, I'm comfortable moving forward with the motion to approve the request for support for $1,000.
I motion to approve the full amount.
Okay, it's a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion to approve funding requests for Disoriented. We appreciate you and thank you for the work you do in the community.
Thank you very much.
And I just wanted to add, I got my pass just recently, so be sure to order it 'cause I'm excited about all the films.
Me too.
And Pamela, Melissa will follow up with you on procedures from now on.
Yeah,
Thank you. Very much.
wonderful. Thank you. Okay. So our next item on the agenda was a open forum for us to discuss the impacts of executive orders in the state of the federal climate. And there's been multiple individuals who've expressed some deep human rights concerns related to what's happening at the federal level. And we touched on some of these in our commissioner updates, but I think a more formal forum and just holding space for the commission to talk about any impacts that they've observed within their own lives, communities that they work with, and general sentiments about the state of where we are at.
Mm.
So,
I think just similar to what Counselor or Commissioner Poindexter said is the trans community. I've heard from a lot of friends, they just do not feel safe right now, locally and from where I recently moved from. So it's just, yeah, trying to show them empathy and support them however we can. But yeah, that's been a big one.
absolutely. Well, I could share and echo those sentiments, and I think what we're seeing and what a lot of Americans, especially historically marginalized groups, or folks who identify with groups that are being targeted by the federal administration, we are seeing a systemic erasure of individual identities. So talking about the trans community and the delegitimization of gender identity, which is a direct attack on human rights and our ability to express ourselves as humans. And I do think for a lot of communities that I've liaisoned with and that I work with and identify is that there are direct attacks on our ability to express our social identity happening on the federal level. And as a Human Rights Commission, what we do is truly under attack at the federal level in a lot of ways. And it isn't nebulous. It isn't something that is an artifact of future conversation. It is our current and present moment. And with populations that I serve, whenever individuals are coming to me and saying, hey, my gender identity isn't represented, what do I do if ICE comes to my door? How do I engage in public benefits because I heard that those programs might be cut? This is a really, really challenging time for a lot of people that are within targeted groups, and we're just at the beginning of it. And so I think it's really important that we as a commission who stands for human rights is identifying that we're in a political climate that has goals that are adverse to those that we're identifying and say we stand for if we are advising on behalf of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that's very challenging when that's coming from your own government. So I think that I have been personally experiencing kind of a daily barrage of new systems and recommendations, and then as a direct service provider, trying to learn how to navigate in what is somewhat disillusioning. And simultaneously trying to look at where we are at nationally and say, how do we as an American people unify and identify what our individual liberties and freedoms are as they're articulated within our current federal system? And is it appropriate for the things that are happening at that level to be happening and for us to be accepting and observing this new reality that we seem to be living within? And for folks that maybe haven't felt the ripple of that, you need to talk to your neighbors and you need to talk to your community, because there are people in our community that are suffering and that are scared. And we have a very unique positionality in society to have a platform to speak about this. And I do have human rights concerns. And we live in a jurisdiction that's emphasized this and prioritized human rights, has a commission where we can speak about this very openly. But that doesn't mean that that's a protected aspect of our society. And I think our federal government is demonstrating that it doesn't guarantee those protections for us to have these conversations and to honor the identities of people through a human rights framework. So I feel very strongly about this matter, and we are in dangerous times for human rights. But we're here to advise and work with the local municipality to see what we can do to emphasize those protections, and hope that all of the protections that we have built over time and the legacy of activists that have worked with governments to establish those protections aren't entirely actively dismantled. So Cynthia, I know you and I have spoke about this.
I really appreciate your outlining how dangerous it is and that we advise the city. And I want to reiterate my question or idea about whether we can link basic rights to the city's website, or whether we have some power to express to the community what their rights are. I'm wondering if we could talk about that, or if there's a process that we need to go through about that.
I think it sounds like, yeah.
I can add some
Fabio,
information. We do have information on rights and protected in Eugene already posted, and we have materials that we can share. We have been sharing specific to some communities. For example, late November, we had an event with the Spanish-speaking community, and we shared a statement by the then Mayor Vines, and then Mayor Knudsen, affirming that Eugene has protections in our code for people who are here without the proper documentation to live in the US. So the city is not going to engage in immigration enforcement unless directed by a court order. So that message has been shared in multiple occasions with that community. We had the listening session with LGBTQ+ people recently, and we are also discussing what the protections we already have in place to people in those groups, and we can do the same for different communities as needed. We have some specific requests that were presented at the listening session, and we'll be following up with staff soon on those. So any advice you have on kinds of materials and whatever we could share, we can gather those and help you connect with community groups.
I know that the city has media partners that get press releases. Is there a way to ask the media to print our list of rights and what to do if you feel your rights are violated?
We can investigate that. If that could be done, we can ask.
Okay, I would really appreciate knowing what we can do.
And the commission has engaged in media promotion, both through engagement with different media outlets, but we also have the ability to use funds for any types of press release and things like that. So if part of our outreach and engagement work plan item would allow for us to explore those different avenues, even beyond the municipal channels. So if there was something that we did, say you wanted to run an ad in the Eugene Weekly or have a press release or do something like that, we do have the capacity to liaison. And so we can explore that as an option as well.
I think to piggyback off of what you just said, the statement that Lieutenant Williams made at the end before he left, I don't know if they put that on social media, but I think that would be super powerful. That the police will protect their right. You know, I did not say it exactly how he did, but however he said it, it was really powerful. And I do follow their page, but I don't remember them coming out and saying something that straightforward. So.
And it was done at the event. So Chief Skinner attended the event of the Spanish-speaking community, for example. And for that group, there was a statement presented there at the event. And
that's good.
Yeah, I think when looking at this, our job, you know, in this capacity is to advise and to do outreach and engage and to speak. In many ways, we're in a position where we get to share what's on our mind. And or city organization, city council, the public can take what we share and do with it what they will. And I think in this space, I feel so compelled to use the positionality that we have to speak out against hatred and bigotry that is so prevalent right now. And it's not a partisan matter. This is a government issue. This is a White House issue. This is a matter of American society and how we as an American identity and how we as a people are engaging in the world and engaging our own public. And people that our government has made a charter to say that we will protect your rights and your freedoms, and you have these constitutional protections, and we have processes and checks and balances and all of these things that we say are the tenet and the core of American democracy. And I feel this deep conviction to use this positionality to share that what we're seeing is counter to human rights. And I think anything that a municipality, if we can advise to share, that establishes on a local level that we acknowledge you are not invisible to us, your identity is valid to us. I think our installation that was at the atrium that you helped, yeah, and things like that are they may be symbolic gestures, or they may be, you know, some type of outward facing content, but what it is saying on a deeper level is that, you know, our institution, our city or jurisdiction validates the identities of people that live within it. And we're guaranteeing a certain level of protection for folks that live here. I think it's very pertinent that we find a way to speak. And it can be just as simple as Lieutenant Williams' statement.
What process do we need to go through now in order to get these statements started?
So we draft. We could say that as a commission, we want to put a group together to draft those and then present them for approval from the commission. You could utilize the VCU work group as a mechanism if you wanted to be in that capacity. But all we would have to do is say that we want to put together outward facing content and appoint a few commissioners to do so, and then bring it to the commission for approval. But yeah, so it'd be as simple as doing so.
And I
Mhm.
I would just add that in the meantime, obviously, we're listening to what you're saying, and we'll work on a number of things that align
Yeah.
with the website and such.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So if we have any ideas, let's put them together and put a group of folks together that might be interested in producing that material. And that's something that we can just decide that we're moving in that direction. And then send out an email of who may be interested in being involved. I think would be appropriate.
Yeah, we will need to check on the content of the material before placing an ad, just to make sure that we're not incurring any violation of legal requirements, but that could be done really fast.
Yeah. So if that's an interesting, something that we'd like to do, we can move forward with doing that. So to move forward, we need to put a motion. So do you have?
Chair, can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Because if you have like an ad hoc group to work on that, you need the full commission to approve it. So that would require an additional meeting of the commission. If you want to schedule it like a special meeting or something to discuss that and approve before we can place it.
Can those special meetings be on Zoom?
Yes, it can be an online meeting only. It can be for one specific subject.
And Fabio, is there an alternative process?
That would be us placing the ad. But to be something that is the voice of the commission would require commission's approval.
So
Were you are also saying it could be done through ECU?
it could be put together through ECU, the ad hoc capacity, and then presented at the next commission meeting. Or put together and presented in a special meeting.
My
So-
question was, sorry, like it was more regarding the timing, because if you wait 1 month to have the statement approved,
Yeah,
and the time it takes for us to purchase and place the ad, and then it will take like 2 months for it to be out. That's why I was asking if you have a special meeting that could
I
be
agree
very
with that.
faster.
Yeah. And so if we wanted to put together a ad hoc group to do that, then we could just pull the commission together, and get something approved and make that a very brief meeting. It would be as simple as coming together, voting, and then ending the meeting. So is that something that we're interested in doing? Any input from folks on Zoom?
No, I agree with you, Chair.
Okay, so Cynthia, would you like to put your motion forward since the idea was yours?
well, as John would say, so moved.
Okay. I love our level of articulation. Okay, so we're putting together a ad hoc group to create a strategy, an
Yes.
outward facing strategy for communicating about the implications of.
Yes, as quickly as we can, so
Okay.
it may involve a special meeting.
Okay, so we'll put together the ad hoc committee, and produce materials, make a decision on those materials, and then reconvene for a special meeting of the commission,
Yes,
for approval. Okay, so we have our first, can we have a second?
Second.
Any, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? So moved. Okay. And I want to note for the record that we did have this noted as a updates and discussion, so we will need to add a slash for votes on our agenda. Okay. Is there anything else that anyone would like to share in regards to this broader conversation before we go on to our next agenda item?
Sorry, Chair, we need to know the ad hoc committee members,
Okay, so,
volunteers for that work.
okay, so who would be interested in doing so? We can't have quorum, so don't everyone raise your hand. Cynthia.
I have two online.
Okay, Jackie, so Commissioner Lowe, Commissioner Booker, Commissioner Poindexter, I'll put you in there.
What number is quorum?
5,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
so we can take one more. I'm happy to jump in on it too, unless someone else has a particular interest. Okay, there are your 4.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on this topic of discussion?
Well, acknowledging that there's very real safety and physical safety and psychological safety concerns at play, and not to venture into the realm of toxic positivity without at least mentioning it. We do live in a community and in a state and in a region in general where it's still safe in places like this and in rooms like this to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's not the case in every municipality in the country. And so I am thankful that we have that freedom here still, where it does not necessarily exist, or it's perhaps not as safe for it to exist other places.
I agree with that to a degree. As someone who could literally see their house while experiencing someone being racist, I didn't volunteer for this because it is something that makes me very uncomfortable. So I appreciate those who are going to be working on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Luca. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Walker.
Just for the record, everyone unanimously voted yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So I look forward to that conversation with you all and what we can put together, and take care, truly, and know that you're in a room full of people that are like-minded enough to be in this room and to be doing this work, and take care of our community. We all have different lenses and connections to members of our community, and we have a responsibility and a role to execute on this position and liaison effectively and provide support. So don't hesitate to reach out if you identify needs in the community and areas that we need to provide support and show up. So, okay, thanks for the conversation, y'all. Our next order on the agenda is a discussion around city budget. And Mia, I know that you provided a lens on this at previous commission meetings. So city staff, I'm not sure who's going to be leading that discussion, but if there's anything around the city budget that you have to share.
I can start with the motivation that we understood from having this in the HRC agenda, which was past budget cycles. The HRC has provided recommendations to City Council on the item that the HRC believes should be a priority. So that's something that is aligned with your work plan and with the duties and expectations for the Human Rights Commission. So in previous years, the Commission has identified some of the line items or the proposals that were being discussed for the budget, and so either provide some recommendations in writing, or some commissioners will be selected to come and speak at a public meeting of the Budget Commission. So that is something that the HRC can do as part of our work. And that was the main reason for the item to be included in this agenda, so you could understand what is possible, and for us to, like, as much as possible, answer questions that you may have about the current budget situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can just provide an overall sort of high level update of where we're at. I think last time that, at your last meeting, I shared that council would be considering a fire fee for new revenue in that would show up on one's utility bill and yield roughly $10 million a year. That would provide $8 million that's currently funded by the fire, but that's currently funded by the general fund. It would provide $8 million to fire. So it's taking $8 million of fire services out of the general fund. We were anticipating a pretty significant general fund gap, and so council did move forward with the fee. That alleviated $8 million of the gap, and we still have $3.5 million general fund gap. So the city manager's proposed budget in the spring will include solutions to fill that $3.5 million gap. And that's an annual gap in the general fund. So the fire fee did pass. There is some, there is some discussion in the community around a potential referendum that would send that to voters. And that hasn't happened yet. We're not aware of that yet. If that becomes the case, city staff can no longer talk about the fire fee. But for now, we're planning for a $3.5 million gap in the general fund.
How does that, I think last time we got together, we talked about, or I think you were directed, like it was gonna be an even percentage cut across all departments, like where, now that we know that 8 million is most likely coming in, where has that left all the departments?
Generally what we do, we normally discuss what's the gap as an executive team and help the city manager determine what her solution will look like. It's not necessarily an across the board reduction across all departments. The reason why we looked at an across the board reduction for the scenarios that were taken to council is that they specifically asked for that. Yeah, that didn't come at the city manager's direction. That was a request of council.
So do you think in that $3.5 million deficit, or that $3.5 million gap, we would see a proportional removal, or you did language at our last meeting? Do you think it would be proportional, or would it have implications for just specific departments and potential scenarios?
What the city manager conveyed to the council when they were discussing the fire fee and what would remain of the gap She did say that she would, to the extent possible, minimize service impacts, given that the council had moved the fire fee forward, wanting to avoid significant service impacts. So we still have to do that work, but I would keep that in mind.
Mhm.
And we'll be working on the budget over the coming weeks. And I'm not sure of the, percentages across departments.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that distribution is interesting to me, just, and I think as we think about our prioritization or recommendations that we may want to make, seeing that proposed budget, and what that $3.5 million allocation would look like, I think will help us to say what aspects, or what departments would align with goals related to our work plan and our charter. What we had looked at in that proposed scenarios and things that, for our commission to be aware and that were shared, and central services in particular, we were looking at operational adjustments, central communications, DT cleanup, beautification, neighborhood services, emergency management, facility and energy management program, and employee resource center support. When we're looking at that for our commission, what that translates to was the Office of Equity and Community Engagement. So when we're thinking about what our commission needs from the city to be, actionable and supportive, those proposed budget cuts would have been detrimental to the function of this commission and our ability to effectively liaison with the public. So as we look at that, one of our more, conspicuous and obvious areas of support would be saying that we do need the functionality of this department for us to actually on our work plan items. And then for some of our other areas that we've looked at, there were cuts within LRCS, and those were some library cuts, just one day library closure, accounting for $500,000, so $500,000 reduction, and some cuts to PDD. I can never get that acronym right, no matter how hard I try. But looking at some of those service impacts that were, would have been proposed with cuts to PPD or PDD. So I think just taking a look at this PowerPoint that they've prepared and sent along, and then if we do see those those cuts, whether they're proportional or distributed in a different way, any way that we can meaningfully engage would be beneficial. So if you all can send whatever that proposal looks like, whenever it is available for us to review, I would be very interested in reviewing and tailoring our recommendations to that proposal, and validating areas that are sustained, and potentially advising on areas that might be of question. But I think that's where we can probably most effectively support you all, and then liaison with the budget committee.
Okay, thank you. And can I just make a clarification, because it's actually an important one? So these were what the city manager was calling scenarios, because these things wouldn't necessarily come forward in this way in a proposed budget, which is a very different body of work. And so given the council's direction for her to bring back scenarios of this magnitude, these were the kinds of things that she brought forward. A really important distinction, because these were never proposed reductions. These were scenarios based on the direction of council and the assignment they gave her. So just want to make that really
clear. Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that, because we don't want to conflate this with, hey, this is what would be lost. I think really what we're talking about is that if we don't have these resources, here's the financial allocations it takes to sustain these essential programs, right? And so us as a commission sharing, we need those resources to actuate on the goals related to human rights in the community. I think that's a very important dimension to what we do. So yeah, it's using that language of scenarios and being clear that is the point, is that we are saying this is the potential scenario associated with losing these funds.
Can I ask a question really quick about that? So like, for instance, these individual slides that have the bullets on the side, what does those pages represent? Is that what would have been a scenario? So like, for instance, it's page 38 on the top of, so
it looks like you have a police department slide up.
So any of these though, with the bullets on the right, like what do those slides mean? if I'm looking at it.
These were the kinds of things that would have to be considered if we were looking at a reduction of $11.5 million
Okay.
in the general fund.
Okay.
So sort of order of magnitude.
Okay.
These are the kinds of things that would help fill a gap of that size.
Okay.
And really by volume, the number of things it would take to fill a gap of that size.
So I think one of my primary questions is, in this process moving forward, what is our kind of formal path for engagement look like? If we were to say A, B, C, and D, what should the commission be doing and
And when?
preparing, and when?
So opportunities to engage formally would be to come to public forums, which would be in advance of even the proposed budget. If you wanted to share thoughts or priorities there, and the commission always reserves the right to, if you send a representative acting on behalf of the commission, speaking on behalf of the commission, you have the opportunity to speak first, so you don't have to wait for the entire public forum. So that's one avenue. Another, of course, is to always communicate in writing with council or the budget committee. And then the budget committee won't reconvene until the spring after the proposed budget is issued. So that was the opportunity Fabio was speaking of, and there was a public comment period at each budget committee meeting.
Okay. Do we know when in the spring by chance?
Usually starts in April,
In April?
and we'll send you those dates, that they're not scheduled yet.
Okay. So reasonably, we could be looking at our work plan after it's approved. Say, these are our key priorities, here are key priorities in the strategic plan, identifying that alignment with council, and putting together either something that would be shared in a public forum or a written format in preparation for presentation in April. And so that gives us about a month to start prepping those materials, and then going into our March commission meeting, we would need to have either prior approved materials or a designated speaker. And that would probably be our best avenue for engagement.
Yes, I believe it will be in April, because the proposal from the manager comes out in April.
Okay.
And then it goes to the budget commission in May sometimes, so between April and May, you'll have the time to present your opinion.
Okay, great. So we do have some time with this. So,
Yeah, the other thing I would add is that you will be visiting with council
Mhm.
for approval of the work plan, and to
Mhm.
the extent that you have awareness of items
Mhm.
that tie to programs within the organization, you could certainly reference it there.
Okay. Great.
When is that presentation of our work plan?
The 26th at 12:30.
Next week.
Yeah, next Wednesday. Okay, so, and for us, I think looking at work plan and probably saying these are key roles and departments that we need for stewarding, that might be a really effective way of some preliminary discussion. Does anyone else have any questions about the budget? This piece? Does it all make sense? It's okay if it doesn't. Counting isn't fun or straightforward, unless you like it.
City manager provide the city council with like a judgment or belief as to the cause of the primary causes of the shortfall or anticipated?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's really just due to our revenue structure, and the general fund relies mostly on property tax. And because of past legislative efforts, Measure 5 in particular, our property tax base can only grow so much, and it does not keep pace with our costs over time, and over time that gap just widens.
Okay.
So over a year ago, council asked the city manager to convene a revenue team made up of community members and staff to advise the council on what new revenues they may pursue. And their top recommendation was the fire fee coming out of that.
Okay. Sorry, I was to him.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, So our last few items, we have work group updates, and we'll have office spectrum and community engagement updates. So we need about 25 minutes to discuss this. We have 10 minutes left in our meeting. So if you all are comfortable extending to 7:40, 7:40, and then I think that we can cruise through our next few updates.
Motion to extend to 7:40.
We have a second?
Second.
Wonderful. All in favor?
I-
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, we must really like each other. We get 10 more minutes. Okay, so we have our homelessness and poverty work group updates. Commissioner Lowe, you have some items that you'd like to share. So I'll give the floor over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The Homelessness and Poverty Work Group has been trying to prioritize or identify what our priorities are for the coming year. And one of the work plan items is 3.14, which has to do with extreme weather. We have had several discussions and made a proposal over the last 3 years around moratoriums on camp clearances and relocating folks when there are extreme weather conditions such as smoke or extreme heat or the cold, the inclement weather we had last week. And we're really trying to hone in on what emergency management procedures already exist for the city and how can we better understand and work with that department to help us kind of just include and plan for people who are experiencing homelessness in these specific types of disasters. And so I wanted to bring it here to ask any of our staff if we still do have an emergency management position and if there's a way that we could potentially work with that unit or have them present at our homelessness and poverty work group and just kind of share what is existing and where we see some of the gaps to be.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we do have an emergency management function that was within the Employee Resource Center and Central Services. We are currently undergoing an assessment of that program, and so we have somebody in the position. They are temporary. They were hired to conduct the assessment. So in the near future, we will be recruiting for an emergency management professional to fill that position. Certainly, emergency management helps coordinate across the organization, but really each of the functional areas is responsible for response related to their content area. And so while the EM could provide maybe an overview, they're probably not going to answer questions to a level of detail that might satisfy the information that you're looking for.
Thank you for that clarification. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think part of Commissioner Lowe's inquiry surrounding discussion with that position is us thinking about natural disasters or other hazards that may result in mass sheltering initiatives or engagement with other probably federal entities like FEMA, American Red Cross, things like that, where we might have events that have an increased level of homelessness.
Okay.
So beyond our current population. So there's kind of an intersection in that space too.
Gotcha, okay.
So I think that we're really looking at what does this look like if a bunch of currently housed folks or at-risk folks become homeless? And what is our solution for the intersection of that population as well?
Gotcha.
Question, the county has emergency management, right? Would they be?
They
could we
would,
ask them
they
to
would be a
come in
good,
and speak?
yeah, that would take some intergovernmental liaisoning, which we
Gotcha.
could probably request information. But yeah, I think Jackie, you had sent over, it was a hazards mitigation plan, and that was a Eugene Springfield plan, I believe.
Yes.
It's Eugene Springfield, and I think Lane County is also included, or they have their own separate. So that was one that we were looking at. I shared that one because it better details, it's all like a risk assessment of what could potentially happen and, priorities for the city and the region. And I think that gave kind of I hope it gave a better perspective of what Eugene is kind of looking at in terms of emergency management and especially around natural disasters.
And the emergency management office certainly has a role in that. They actually draft that natural hazardous mitigation plan that goes to council for approval. In this last cycle, we did partner with the county, and so our natural hazardous mitigation plan actually acts as an annex to the counties. So we've sort of restructured there and partnered with them in a different way, but we could look into having someone come talk specifically about that if that's your interest. That's definitely falls within the wheelhouse of the
Okay, great. So maybe we can draft some of what those questions would look like and then have some communication about what would be the appropriate environment to bring someone in.
Sure.
Okay, great. Commissioner Lowe, anything else you'd like to share on that?
Nothing for me. I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Well, great work on this. And you've been putting a lot of effort into it. So I appreciate you prepping those materials and questions. I think the general pieces that Commissioner Bradley had spoke about is that the sanction posting protocol has been shared with our police commission, as a lot of the complaints and grievances that have been forwarded to the Human Rights Commission are surrounding interactions that involve law enforcement. So we've made sure that we effectively liaison with some of those reports, and that is on their radar, and we're expecting follow-up from their body on ways that we might collaborate on procedures that Eugene law enforcement may be engaging in. And then we did put in an inquiry request on protocols associated with that, so that we can see the current procedures and which staff members across multiple departments might be engaging in. So that's a pending inquiry that we'll hopefully have and be able to review in the homelessness and poverty work group. So we're making forward momentum in that space. The piece that, thank you for sending it over today. There were some pictures and a poster from the hostile design studio that we've been working with the University of Oregon students on. They did have an event where they provided a series of presentations on a variety of artifacts that they identified to be examples of hostile design. They hosted that at the library at the end of January, and they will be having another presentation event at the library. I will pull up that poster. What date is it? Let me see if I can. They will have another one in February, Thursday, February 27th, 2 to 3:30 p.m. At the Eugene Public Library. And that will be the part 2 of the poster that's shared up here, in which students will be presenting on their outcomes based off community feedback that they received at that listening session. So we did have a couple commissioners present there, and it was a really positive point of engagement. And we've invited those students to come to the upcoming Riverfront Updates meeting, because there were some students that had particular interest in land use decisions and public infrastructure within the Riverfront project. So hoping that that is a really productive avenue for them to glean information on that project. And their goal is to produce publicly accessible maps. So if you actually had it pulled up, Fabio, I might index it. Oh, no, you're okay. It's opportunistic of me. I just saw it. If you scroll up, yeah, that's great. Thank you. So you can see here these maps. So the students actually plotted points that they would demonstrate, that they identified as being examples of different forms of hostile architecture. And there was, it's very interesting. There's a lot of different examples. It's not just what's in space, it's what's not in space or how things are structured as deterrents for different types of behaviors. They're focused largely on any of the folks that might be trying to seek shelter under public infrastructure or sleep on benches, but also just exist in various environments. So they were eliciting feedback from the public on the public's experience within these spaces. And then they plotted the points of all of these different pieces of infrastructure that they've identified. This is going to be something that's publicly accessible. So if you have interest in this, whenever they've completed the project, they're going to be sharing over these links as something that members of the public can engage in. And I did hear them talking about a potential GIS layer in which members of the public could plot their own points. So I think this really falls into our thoughts around our unhoused response in that intersection with PDD, I got the acronym, but this is really at a city level, our unhoused response is being shifted into a planning department, which means that there are tools and communications and artifacts that we could advise on for the staff populations to be thinking about what types of mechanisms are being used within the city and what that signals to certain marginalized communities that might be trying to experience public spaces or exist within public spaces. So really fascinating project. I recommend if you have an interest in hostile architecture, coming out and viewing that on the 27th. It's free and accessible to the public. And yeah, some really positive conversations coming out of it. And then the final piece is our, we do have a council item of interest. There was a work session proposal by Councilor Groves on November of 2024 that is going to be exploring strategies to reduce or eliminate the sale of stolen or undocumented scrap metal in Eugene, update on staff work to ban shopping carts from city parks and bike and pedestrian pathways, and measures to reduce shop cart theft. And then to discourage occupants of motor vehicles while on public streets from transferring money or goods to panhandlers. So this is a proposed topic of conversation by Councilor Groves. I've asked our council liaison to connect with us on recommendations that we may have on the direct and disparate impact of policy recommendations, and so that we can prepare some information for that work session. There are definitely some considerations we want to be making for folks who are unhoused, who may use public infrastructure, what it looks like whenever folks are engaging in forced migration within our city, and how something like a shopping cart would be a mechanism for moving their objects from point A to point B, and a prohibition on public pathways and pedestrian pathways, I think, is challenging. I do have some personal, ethical, and moral quandaries surrounding the dangerous practice of transferring money or goods to people while on public streets, as I do think that this may interfere with people's ability to express charity and generosity, which might be associated with people's expression of religion or spirituality. So a direct ordinance under the guise of safety may be missing some key components of people's ability to express their personal identities. And revisiting that through a lens, that disparate impact lens, I think may be really important and something that we might want to be talking about as a commission, and trying to add a diversity of perspective on that limitation and that suggestion. So I think as we explore this, really our goal is that we might put together some materials through the Homelessness and Poverty Work Group. Councilor Groves has been on the Human Rights Commission and has liaisoned, and I think has been a steward of our perspectives back in 2021. And so I think there may be some benefit to us providing our lens and seeing how we make sure these policies are comprehensive and don't have gaps that would impact the historically marginalized groups that we represent. So that is a goal of the coming month with the Homelessness and Poverty Work Group, and then hopefully we can put something together that goes into council's hands for that work session. So I think that's everything from the Homelessness and Poverty Work Group, and we're right on time for We See You work group updates. So I will hand off the torch to We See You.
I don't know the chairs want to say anything, but we are meeting on Monday. We had to
Yes.
reschedule,
Okay.
so we have more updates after we meet.
Okay, great.
Let's see if Kiana has anything to add.
Yeah, Commissioner Kabuka, anything to add on We See You targets or goals?
Nope, that, since we didn't meet, I'm looking forward to just having that discussion when we do.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you for all the sharing on the listening sessions and all the work you all have been doing to get We See You activated and mobilized. I appreciate you. Office of Equity and Community Engagement updates.
Thanks, Chair. Most of our updates have already been covered through the listening sessions and also through the report that we shared in draft format last meeting, and then we send you the final report. So that has been out and published now, so we can just link it. And it's in our website, so if you want to see the full report that describes everything that we did in the past year. And helps people understand the kind of DEI work done at the City of Eugene. So it is a great report for those who want to understand more, especially at this time when there's so much negative information about what DEI is or is not. So the report actually helps people understand what we actually do day to day. So we have 5 people here working in the office and supporting multiple programs and departments across the city. I want to share an update on HRC recruitment. So we are coming to the final steps of our recruitment. We have 4 open positions to the HRC. We got 20 candidates, and we asked a committee of HRC members to review those applications. I'm sharing here the scoring rubric, so the items that people look to when they read those applications and try to determine who the HRC would recommend. In the process, that the scores that we get are added up, and then we just have a list of the top candidates. So I'm going now to review the names with the scores of the 3 commissioners who helped us with that process. So here are the 20 candidates ranked by the scores that they received. Some candidates did not complete the entire form, so they may have a low scores because they did not submit all the information that would be necessary for the commissioners to assess their ability to serve in the Human Rights Commission. The decision to fill the positions is made by City Council, but they do consider the recommendation from the HRC. It may not align exactly with HRC recommendation because council tries to select representatives from multiple wards. So right now we have a concentration of 4 commissioners residing in the same ward. So councils like to have representation across the different parts of the city. And there are other reasons that they may use in their judgment as to whom they will present. Usually they invite a group of candidates to come and provide statements, and from those finalists, they select the ones that will be appointed to the commission. Any questions on that? No? Then, as Melissa said before, we have 3 upcoming listening sessions to complete our community engagement guidelines, one with immigrants and refugees advocates and members of the community, one with the Arab and Muslim community, and one with Native American. So we'll be sharing the details of those dates, and we welcome with you or any other human rights commissioner to join and listen to the conversation. The summary of the information we are gathering to that process will all be available as part of our report when we are finalizing the community engagement guideline.
Okay,
And that's it for today.
all right, wonderful. Thank you, and thanks for all the work for folks that were on the scoring committee and for compiling all of that. Those were due on the 17th, and all of that was put together by the 18th. So I appreciate your quick turnaround on that. Yeah, great. Okay, so our last item here is space for public comment. If we have anyone in the chat forum that's identified.
No one signed up.
Okay. So we have successfully completed by 7:40 as we moved, and appreciate all of y'all's contributions and for the follow-up from this meeting. So thanks for being here tonight, and I think we can safely say meeting adjourned.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.